Please give a great big Steel City welcome to Mara Wilson. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Oh my gosh, I'm so lonely up here. Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here in Pittsburgh. I really love Pittsburgh. I've been here a couple of times, and I think it is a beautiful, and as one of my friends said this morning, vastly underrated city. So very, very happy to be here. I used to spend summers in Pennsylvania, and yeah, there's definitely a big part of my heart here. So lovely to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And you took away my question as far as if you've ever been to Pittsburgh. So
I have. I went to Primanti Brothers last night, and I've been there before, and the sandwiches are amazing, just absolutely lovely. I will say, though, that the coldest I've ever been was also in Pittsburgh. And that is because I was touring with a little show called Welcome to Night Vale, which some of you might know. And we were doing a show together, but we had been on tour, and we were all dressed in, like, suits and dresses, and I was wearing, like, a very summery dress. And then we got to the theater, and the back of the door wouldn't close. And it was the dead of winter in Pittsburgh. And I was wearing like a sundress. And so we all huddled together for warmth and then went out for pierogies after, I think. Yeah, I was a wuss. I'm sorry. I was raised in Southern California. So yeah, but the Pittsburgh winter. But it was cozy, and I have lots of happy, cozy memories of Pittsburgh now.
well, that is awesome to hear. So you've played a lot of roles, acting, voice acting. I have always wondered, though, for Miracle on 34th Street, before the movie, did you believe in Santa Claus?
I actually didn't because I'm Jewish.
That's a good reason.
So I didn't grow up believing in Santa Claus, but I definitely believed in other things. Like I very much believed in the Tooth Fairy. I would like set out food for the Tooth Fairy. I would give her presents. I would make little books for her to read. So I was very into the idea of believing in something magical. And I would tell them about that. I would tell them that I very much believed in the Tooth Fairy. So they knew that I could actually believe in something.
Well, that is awesome. Let's get some audience questions. We have a first one right here.
Question on my phone real quick. You were in a show called Helluva Boss.
I was.
Well, only in one episode, the character you played, Miss Mayberry, made a huge impact. If you were to return for a future episode, what story would you like to see your character in?
Oh my gosh! Which character? You mean what? Sorry, I think I lost you at the end. Like
what story would you like to see your character involved in?
Oh, I mean, I think Ms. Mayberry has a talent. I mean, she is a demon, and the thing about her is she believes that she's doing right. That's the most important thing, and that's the thing with a lot of characters who are kind of evil. Is a lot of them believe that they're really right, which is sometimes the scariest thing about them. You know, Thanos thinks that he's balancing the universe. You know, Miss Mayberry believes that, you know, she was a good person until she just snapped, which I have my suspicions that she wasn't. So she is a demon now, and I think that she has a lot of anger that could really be challenged into something, could really be channeled into something else. So, I mean, I'm going to leave the writing up to, Vivzi and the rest of them, but in the ecosystem of hell, she probably would have a good place, wreaking vengeance on people that she thinks deserves it. She probably would do very well with the people of IMP, but she, I think, is a little bit hard to control. So, yes, you have a poster of them, but she's a little bit hard to control, so she might be a little bit volatile. I think one of the great things about Helluva Boss is it shows that, there's an ecosystem of demons and of imps and all these things, but the really unpredictable ones are the humans. So she is a former human, and who knows what she might do.
We have a couple questions over here. You're right.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to con today. I'm a teacher, and every year I read Matilda to my students, and I show them the movie, and it's wonderful, and it's always great, and I love watching it every time. And I had heard that you lived with Danny DeVito and Rhea when you were a kid for a little while. Am I wrong? I was just curious if there was truth to that and if you remembered anything.
I didn't quite live with them, but they took very good care of me because my mother had breast cancer while we were filming and unfortunately passed away shortly before it came out. And I was only 8 years old, but they took very good care of me. They were, they would invite me over to their house and I would stay there for the weekend. They took me to see a touring production of Beauty and the Beast, which, I was a musical theater nerd the moment that I was born. So I was so excited to do that. They had a little movie theater in their backyard and we would watch movies there. They invited me to parties. They threw me a birthday party. And they took such good care of me. And even when my mother passed away, they even sent food to the house, made sure that we were all eating, that we were all taking care of ourselves. And we're just endlessly kind and endlessly giving. And that's something that I really appreciate. They kind of saved our family in so many ways. So I didn't literally live with them. I did spend a few weekends with them. But they were always open. Their house was always open to me, and I consider myself very, very fortunate to have worked with them. Michael Ritchie, who I worked with that summer, was also another person who was like, yeah, my house is always open to you. And so, yeah, they really did kind of save my life at that time. Also, thank you so much for being a teacher, because seriously, can we have some applause for teachers? Because teachers do, one of the most important jobs in the world, if not the most important job in the world. And I love
that. I've ditched my students today to be here.
Well, there's a balance in all things.
We have this gentleman over here.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my little 7-year-old niece loves you, especially Matilda, and
Thank
she
you.
calls Miracle the girl who doesn't believe in Santa. And she's going to be jealous I got to ask you a question, but were those two films fun to make, The Miracle on 34th Street and Matilda?
They were very fun to make. I do remember it being a little bit uncomfortable to be a Miracle on 34th Street because we were filming in the late spring in Chicago, and we were wearing lots of heavy wool and corduroy, and it was very, very hot. It was Christmas in July, but we had a great time making it because the cast was just so wonderful. Sir Richard Attenborough, who I believe later became Lord Attenborough, was just a class act, and he kind of was the only Santa Claus that I ever really believed in. And everybody there, Dylan McDermott, I was laughing all of the time. And Robert Prosky I'd actually worked with, he played the judge. I had actually worked with him on Mrs. Doubtfire, and what he always used to do was do a Donald Duck voice whenever the two of us were together. And I loved Donald Duck, and he's still my favorite Disney character. And so he would do that when I was in Doubtfire, and I would always laugh. And so when I was doing my scenes with him and I had to approach the bench, he started talking to me like Donald Duck, being this very serious duck, very serious judge talking like Donald Duck. And Elizabeth Perkins, everybody was wonderful. And Doubtfire, what can I say about Robin? He was so funny, so kind, just the loveliest guy. I remember him asking me my first day there what music I liked, and I told him I liked musicals. And he, while wearing Mrs. Doubtfire outfit, started singing There Is Nothing Like a Dame from South Pacific. And my mom loved that he was a man dressed like a woman singing There Is Nothing Like a Dame. And he would do funny things like the petting zoo scene. He fed, I think, the pony some oats out of his hat and then turned to me with this, hat full of oats and, pony saliva and was like, do you want to wear it? Everybody was there. And Matt and Lisa, they still are my siblings to this day. Lisa and I will text each other, hey sis, how are you doing? All the time. And so, yeah, we really did feel like family.
That is awesome.
What, 20, 30 years later and it still delights me? Yes, please do. Please do.
So, a lot of child actors at a young age have a rough transition into stardom. How did you handle that pressure at such a young age?
Oh, I could talk about this for hours. And I have. I've been on so many shows, so many podcasts. I've written about it in my book. I've written about it other places. I've written about it in newspapers and all kinds of places. It is incredibly rough. I think that there's a lot of expectation of what people want from you, and there's a lot of pressure on you. And I think that when I was growing up, there really weren't very many roles for like the girls who were a little bit nerdy. It kind of went from, you were a nerdy girl to what were you going to be? You could be like really sexy. And I think if somebody wants to be like that, that's cool, that's their choice. But I worry about it happening to girls who are very young. I don't think girls who are 14 or 15 are really in a good place to be able to make choices about how they appear. And so I kind of decided to go away. And I was sort of burned out on Hollywood anyway, because what they do when you're a child is they always want you to play younger roles. But when you're 13, you look like you're 13. You don't look like you're 10. So there kind of wasn't very much for me anyway. And I mean, I think like now, we had shows like The Babysitter's Club, which was unfortunately canceled. We have a couple shows for like, kids that age, girls that age. But I think that there really isn't that much understanding, of what kids that age want and need. And there aren't very many roles for them. Like I said, it's better now. But also Hollywood is I always tell people, look, Hollywood isn't immoral, it's amoral. It's all about making money at the end of the day. And it's all about what they think people want. So Hollywood is trying to give people what they think they want. And I think now, these days, fans have more of a voice. And they can say, we want to see people who are more like this. We want to see people who look more natural. We want more parts like this and this and this and this. And there really wasn't stuff like Stranger Things, with kids that age in my day. So I was burned out on Hollywood. Hollywood didn't really want me anymore. So what I did is I went back and I studied theater and I studied writing and I went to school. And I really learned how to write my own work and feel more in control of my work and my life. And I think that's the most important thing. You really need to make sure that you have a solid basis in your life, that you have, friends, family, if you have like a faith or a community that you really belong with, you do that. You really need that solid basis in your life, I think, to be able to survive the sort of onslaught of Hollywood and all the craziness of it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of child actors don't have that. So it can be a rough road. Also, if you tell somebody you're going to grow up to be, crazy and a drug addict and ugly and this and that, if you tell somebody constantly that they are something or they're going to be something, it can become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think that's another thing that we need to keep in mind. If we keep talking about how, all child stars grow up and they become crazy and they're mean and they're ugly and they're this and they're that, they might become that. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Kind of a heavy topic, I know, but...
Well, I have a quick question. You started to do some amazing voice acting work. What drew you to that particular part of acting?
I mean, I've been doing voice acting since I was, I think, 5. I was in commercials. I think I was in a Werther's Original commercial. I've been doing voice acting my whole life. And my mother had a really beautiful speaking voice, and I always hoped that I would get her voice when I grew up. And to a degree, I do. I had a sort of unnaturally low voice for my age. I've always told people that even at 11, I sounded like B. Arthur. And I was a Valley girl, so I sounded like B. Arthur doing a cover of Frank Zappa's Valley Girl. Yeah, a lot of music nerds getting that one. But I always wanted to do voiceover. I loved it. I mean, I loved animation from a young age, and I'm from Burbank. I mean, Burbank, see so many people nodding. Burbank is the home to Nickelodeon Studios, to Disney Animation Studios, to Cartoon Network, to Warner Brothers. It is the home of animation. My friends' dads and moms growing up worked in animation, so I always wanted to do that. And when I was, I think, 11, one of my best friends' dads created a little show called Batman Beyond. And amazing show, right? And actually the funny thing was, I think at the same time, she was like, kind of middle school dating a boy in our class. And I found out later that his dad helped create Darkwing Duck. And they broke up because they were, 11 or 12. But, I mean, can you imagine the power couple that could have been? But anyway, I did Batman Beyond, and I loved it. I worked with Will Friedle, who I still love to this day, one of the funniest people I've ever met. And that was something that I knew I always wanted to do. I was going to keep doing it. Even if I wasn't going to appear in film anytime soon, I kept doing voiceover really all through my teen years, even in little projects, even in college. And then when I became an adult, that was something that I really pursued. I did a bunch of commercials when I lived in New York. You might have heard me on one or two. And then, eventually I started hanging out with more animators and auditioning for more things. And I told them, I was like, listen, this is what I really want to do. And then last year, actually, I really started getting into audiobooks. And I love audiobooks because, I did theater in college, and nothing feels closer to theater to me than doing audiobooks, because you get to play all the characters and you get to have so much fun. And I adore it. And I've been telling people, like, I would be happy in a booth for the rest of my life. And I think, when I go to cons, I feel like I meet people who really, really appreciate voiceover work. Not everybody does, but voiceover acting is acting. Voiceover actors are actors. It is, it can be a difficult, trying job at times, but it can also be the best thing ever. And I love being around you guys because you understand it and you appreciate it and you love it. So thank you all for that. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Thank you. We have a question over here.
Hello, Mars. So wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I have been a huge fan of all the movies that you starred in: Mrs. Doubtfire, Miracle on 34th Street, Matilda, and of course Thomas and the Magic Roro. I brought my little Thomas train.
Oh
with
my
me, so good to
gosh!
see you.
Hi, Thomas.
Yep. Kind of like old friends meeting again.
It is. It really is. I got to ride in Thomas.
I know. That was my favorite scene.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a very fun movie to make.
Oh, thank you so much. Thomas the Tank Engine was always dear in my heart, and I'm really glad that you were a part of it.
I am too, and Thomas fans are all so wonderful. They are so loyal and so loving, and I really appreciate that, and I really love it.
All right, thank you. So I have a two-part question. So the first question is, in Matilda, I want to ask about your experience on one particular scene. It's the scene when you go to Miss Trunchbull's house on a windy night, not only like to retrieve Miss Honey's items, but to terrify Miss Trunchbull with your powers. So how did you and Danny DeVito talk about that scene, how you handled it all, your experience on that? And the second question is, what was it like working with Britt Allcroft, the writer and director of Thomas and the Magic Roro, considering that that was the last film you worked on before retiring?
Let's see. The thing about that scene in Matilda was it took several days, and there were several different times that we filmed it. It was filmed on a soundstage. I remember there being a lot of wind machines. And so there was one part where I think actually my stunt double was up on a thing that looked like the roof. So some of it was actually my stunt double, Laura. Yeah, it was really funny. And she was really funny. She would make a lot of jokes. And we also I remember there was a trellis that I had to climb up. And the guy who did greenery made like a beautiful vine and made it look really beautiful. And Danny was like, I don't think she can climb up there. We might need to get rid of it. And I remember him saying, I loved that vine. And later on, I would talk to him about like his relationship with the vine. I was like, are you and the vine still friends? It was a beautiful vine, Are you going to marry the vine? He accepted it. He was fine. He joked with me about that. And probably one thing that I remember the most about filming those scenes is that I had to eat the chocolates, and those chocolates weren't very good. There were other chocolates in the film that I ate. The chocolates that I eat in the scene at the end with Miss Honey, those chocolates were great. Those chocolates that I ate in that scene, though, not very good. There was a spit bucket, so I could spit them out. But then working with Britt Allcroft, my goodness, she was lovely. She was like having your grandmother around. And she was funny and kind of eccentric in a very British way. And she would, tell us funny stories and she was a little bit ridiculous at times, but always with a great sense of humor about herself. And she would always call me Flower. She'd be like, Mara, Flower, you're so lovely. How are you today, Flower? She was so sweet. And she built an empire out of something that so many people love to this day. And so I love her, and I still have a lot of respect for her.
Awesome. We have a question over here.
Hi, Mara.
Hi.
I'm very happy that you're here. So I know that you're very open about mental health, and that means a lot to me because I have dealt with and still deal with mental health challenges, and it's hard. So I was just my question was, what's your advice on how I can just be confident and not, think so bad about it, and just be confident and try to just think in the positive way about the mental health difficulties?
You probably have somebody or someone or something in your life that you really love and care about. For a lot of us, it's things like our dog or our cat. Maybe it's a best friend, or for me, I think also it's like my nieces and nephews, my friends' kids. And you have to ask yourself, would I be this critical with them? And you never would. You might be a little angry at your dog or cat if they poop on the floor or they vomit on the rug, but you forgive them because you love them. And I think that's kind of the way it has to be with yourself. And you don't need to be in love with yourself. You don't need to be, that's what people always say, you need to love yourself first. And I do think that's true, but you don't need to be in love with yourself. You don't need to be like Meghan Trainor or Lizzo being like, I'm the coolest. Not all of us feel that way. They do, but maybe we don't. And I think that that's okay. You live with yourself the way you live with a roommate. And what you do is you treat yourself, though, the way that you would love a child, a dog, a cat, a best friend, where you forgive yourself and you accept yourself and you say, okay, you know what? I'm not feeling very well today, but I'm going to accept it. There's some bad days, some good days. And I'm not going to beat myself up for it because it won't work. And it doesn't help, It doesn't help to yell at a dog. They don't understand what you're yelling about. So really, that's what I try to do, is I try to treat myself the way that I would treat somebody that I love. And I always remind myself, this stinks, but it will pass. And it always does. It always passes. You're going to have good days and bad days. Try to remember that. And yeah, try to be easy on yourself.
Awesome. Yes,
Thank you.
Round of applause. We have this young lady over here.
Hi, I actually have 2 questions.
I love your red ribbon.
Thank you. My first question is, what was your favorite character that you played in all your movies?
Probably Matilda. I think Matilda was probably my favorite because I also really loved to read, and I think that she was a character who had a lot of power and used her love of reading and the friends that she made and the confidence that she gained from, being with Miss Honey to really do something and to fight bullies. And so I think that I really admired her and I really loved her, and she was the best part to play.
My second question is, do you like Matilda the musical?
I do. I still haven't watched the movie yet, but I saw the musical on Broadway a couple years ago, and it was lovely. And I got to meet, actually, one of the little Matildas. I call them little Matildas. They're not that little anymore. But I got to meet Sophia Janusa, who played Matilda, at an event. And I went up to her, and I said, "Hi, I'm Mara." And her mom said, "Oh, we know who you are." Matildas know each other. And we took pictures together, and I gave her a hug, and they were both very sweet. And yeah, I haven't watched the movie yet. I'm going to watch the movie. And I mean, I love Emma Thompson, so that's going to be fun. But I did see the musical a few years ago, and I still listen to the cast album all the time.
Excellent. We have another question over here.
Hi. I also was a big Thomas fan, probably a little too late in my life. But
there's no age limit. You can be a Thomas fan. I meet tons of adult Thomas fans.
Well, as I got older, I got more into filmmaking and stuff, and I learned about the whole P.T. Boomer plot line that got cut out of the movie, and also how in the original story it seemed like it was how Thomas related to Lily as opposed to Lily being part of Thomas's story. So I was wondering, what did you think? Like, I saw a lot of the rough cut that recently got bootlegged online. How do you feel about the final cut? Do you wish it was more like what Britt Ogriff originally intended to be?
I definitely do. I remember watching the movie and thinking, what? They cut out a whole big part, and they made Diesel the villain, and that doesn't really make sense. I mean, Diesel is obnoxious, but he's not a villain. And being very confused when I watched it and being sort of sad. And there was a lot more about Lily as a character and a lot more about Lily and Patch and their connection to the island. And it was very strange. And a couple years ago, I talked to Britt, and she said that she felt bullied into it. She felt like she was pushed into it. And she was, I mean, there weren't a lot of women, working in Hollywood at the time. And there were a lot of, kind of old guard people who were pushing her into things. And I felt horribly sorry for her, and I really wish that it had stayed closer to her vision. I think that there was so much. There was even a scene where I fell out, and Thomas had to come back to rescue me. And that would have been so much fun. That would have been like a fun bonding exercise for us. And I think Thomas had to overcome a fear to do it too. So yeah, I'm very sad that they didn't do it. I'm glad that they've released more of it, but maybe hopefully one day we will actually have the director's cut, if you will.
Okay, another question here.
More of a statement. I actually took a voice acting class with Richard Stephen Horvitz not too long ago. I'm a huge fan of voiceover. It's one of my dream jobs. And, you know, your work, Richard's work, like Vivzi's, like universe, everything animation-wise has inspired me to do that type of job. So thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And Richard Horvitz, you know, a.k.a. Invader Zim, a.k.a. I mean, who hasn't he played? Yes. You know, a.k.a. Moxie, a.k.a. Daggett. So many, you know, wonderful characters. I definitely fangirled a bit when I was getting to work with him.
There's one back there. They're making me get in my steps.
Hi, I know that you just were talking about Thomas, and I know that there were a few questions about Thomas, but I grew up watching that movie like 100 times, and I was just wondering, as a kid, how did it feel like talking to an inanimate object? Or, so, like, I don't know how it was filmed, but, like, how did you talk to Thomas?
It was, I mean, I think that by that time I was used to it. And I think that when you're a kid, you kind of have a big imagination anyway. So talking to a doll and being told that it was Junior, I was like, okay. I do think sometimes it was a bit more challenging than acting, because you're not really acting with a person. And probably being in scenes with the other actors there was more fun, especially Michael Rogers, who was so much fun to work with. And I think that it was... But I will say that we did a lot of that on Matilda, too. On Matilda, we were looking at, you know, instead of actually looking at Amanda Thripp, we were looking at pieces of tape on sticks. We were looking at all kinds of different things here and there. There's a lot of that. You have to use your imagination a lot. So it was very strange at some points. There was a lot of green screens. There was a doll that we had to talk to. And there was... I remember writing in Thomas at one point, and it just was me climbing inside a box and them just shaking the box back and forth, this giant wooden box, to make it seem like I was in the train. So yeah, it could be hard at times, but I do think also that I was used to it, and I think that I had a big imagination, and so that made it a little bit easier. You do kind of have to use your imagination on that.
Thomas wasn't real? Oh, no. We have another question over here.
Hi. Matilda was one of my absolute favorites for like 15 years. But I have to wonder, you being so young when you played in that movie, did the woman who played Miss Trunchbull, Pam
Ferris?
Ferris, thank you. Were you ever terrified of her, even for a minute? Because she terrified me when I was a little kid.
Pam Ferris is one of the best actors I've ever worked with, and she's also one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. If you talk to her, she's very soft-spoken, very gentle, and she will show you pictures of the dogs and cats that she recently rescued.
Oh,
she will have a
case,
tea party with you.
Actor.
Oh, she is. She definitely is. And I think it's sort of like some people, you know, I've heard, like, I have friends who've worked with Doug Jones. Doug Jones plays monsters for a living. And he apparently is one of the nicest people ever, who will give you a nice hug. And I think he like teaches Sunday school. He's, you know, just the absolute sweetest. And I think a lot of people like that kind of get their, you know, any frustration or anger or hurt, they kind of get it out in their performance. They bring it into their performance. And they're very balanced in real life. And Pam Ferris was like that. I mean, there were some times where, you know, she would be breaking things and we would be careful because she'd be breaking things in the scene. But I was never afraid of her once. And she told me that she tried to be scary to the kids, or tried to at least be aloof so they wouldn't be really, they wouldn't feel like they knew her, and that might have more of an effect on their performance. But then one day, one of the girls in the class came up to her, and Pam looked down because she felt this tiny hand coming into hers, and she thought, oh, they know my secret. They know that I'm a softie.
Excellent. We have another question over here.
When you were in like Matilda and Thomas and all those movies, have you ever seen any like stunt doubles or something? Have you ever seen them get hurt?
I haven't seen stunt doubles get hurt, but I have seen some things kind of go wrong. For example, there's a scene where Pam Ferris and Matilda is getting hit with some erasers, some chalkboard erasers, and she unfortunately got some chalk dust in her eye, which was very uncomfortable. And so we had to stop. And I remember her, and we all felt terrible because, like I said, Pam is wonderful, and you don't want anybody to get hurt, let alone somebody who's so kind. But she went off and she rinsed out her eye and she was completely fine. So that was okay. I didn't see anybody really get hurt, but also I did a lot of kids' movies. So, it wasn't like, something with like Keanu Reeves where he's doing like a lot of crazy action. It was, it was mostly small things. And they're very, very careful, especially when they work with kids. But stunt doubles they're true professionals, and they will do crazy things, and they love it. For them, it's like riding a roller coaster. I don't think I could do that. I don't even like roller coasters.
Me neither. Any other? We have one back there.
Okay, so I noticed that, I know that you mentioned imagination and that when you're younger, you have more of an imagination. Now that you're older, do you think that you lost or gained some more imagination?
I think that's a really good question. I think that when we're young, we're not afraid to be vulnerable. And I think that for me, it felt almost easier to be an actor when I was a kid because I could... I didn't feel ashamed at crying in front of people. I didn't feel ashamed at embarrassing myself in front of people. I might have like at school or if there was somebody I had a crush on, but I didn't really think about those things. And then I think when you're an adult, you think, oh, I have to hold it together. I have to be tough. I have to, be good at my job. I have to do this. I have to do that. There's so many things that you have to do. And I think a lot of acting as an adult is sort of gaining that childlike sense of yourself again, feeling really free in your body and feeling really free in your emotions and feeling really free to let go. And I think for some people, it's a very spiritual thing. It's very similar to praying, to meditating. And for some people, it's very similar to the playing that they had as kids. I think a lot of the best actors are people who get very into their body through dance and, athletics, or people who could just get very into their emotions. So I think that can be hard for grown-ups to do. It can be hard for adults to access that. But there's all different ways of imagining things, and there's all different ways of experiencing feelings. And I do think that one of the best things is to try to get that back as an adult. And I do feel like my imagination has come back in recent years. I think maybe when I was a teenager and in college, I was a bit more stubborn and a bit more closed off. But I feel like I get less cynical as I get older. And I get more open as I get older. And I think that that's something that we all should try to be. We should all try to be open and understanding and forgiving with ourselves and really feel like we are in our bodies, our lives, our minds, our imaginations, and ourselves.
Very, very true. We have another question over here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how did joining the Channel Awesome shows like Nostalgia Critic and Nostalgic Chick, how did that help jumpstart your career a little?
I mean, that was a long time ago, and it's funny to me that I'm still being asked about that. But, I think that for me, I hadn't been on screen in a long time. And there were a lot of things that I did when I was younger where now I look back and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should have worked with these people. I don't know if I should have done that. Shows that I was on in New York, things like that. But the one thing I will say is that they have a huge fan base. And, obviously I'm still being asked about that today. And I'm very lucky to have been able to meet that fan base and to still be able to meet people who are in that fan base today.
Excellent. We have time for a couple more questions, so we have one over here.
Hello. What was your favorite part of Mrs. Doubtfire? Your favorite scene?
My favorite scene to film or my favorite scene to watch? Both. Okay. Let's see. Probably my favorite scene to film was, the party scene was very fun. And actually, if you look closely in the party scene, you can see me and my childhood teddy bear, Pinky, playing and jumping around to jump around. That was really fun to do. Any scene with Robin, I think, is great. I think anything where he's doing where he's trying to play two parts is really great. Another really fun part to film was at the dinner table when we're in his apartment and we're eating Chinese food. He at the end of while we were filming, he started singing some songs, and he started making up songs, and we actually at one point listened as he broke into a freestyle rant about ants. I don't know why. I don't even know how that came up, but that you'll see at the end of that scene, he puts his chopsticks up like antenna, like this. And that was cut out to make me smile. And that was something that he did in his freestyle ant rap, was he put the chopstick on his head and pretended to be an ant and, rapped about how humans were always stepping on them.
Do you remember any of the lyrics?
Something like, look at all these ants doing what they can. Those humans think they step on the lands. They really step on us. And da-da-da-da-da, something like that. I can't remember the lines after that.
That's awesome. More questions? Over here. When I have to walk for a long time, I should just go all the way.
Hi, did you get to keep anything from any of your movies?
I did. I got to keep the dress that I wear at the last scene with Miss Honey and Matilda. I got to keep a lot of dresses, actually, there. I got to keep, let's see, what else? I can't remember if I kept anything from Doubtfire, but yeah, I think I might have even had some of the ribbons. But I liked to play with the ribbons and tear them apart because I was a very fidgety kid. So I think maybe they didn't think it was the best idea to give those to me. But yeah, a lot of the dresses and the outfits that I wore, I got to keep. And I was very happy because they were my favorite.
Back here.
Hi, Mara.
Hi.
We got here a little late, so I hope no one had asked this. The weather was treacherous out there.
Yeah, it was.
But the music in Matilda is just so dear to our hearts. I'm just wondering, what is your favorite genre of music and what's your current favorite song?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. I grew up listening to a lot of Motown with my parents. So Motown is definitely one of my favorite genres. A lot of Motown and soul from the 60s and 70s is my favorite. I also grew up listening to a lot of British invasion stuff like Herman's Hermits, The Kinks. I love The Kinks. Let's see. My current favorite songs are, Nowhere to Run by Martha and the Vandellas is always one of my favorites. I think that's up there for sure. And oh my gosh, I wish I had my phone on me because I could look it up. Also, I really like that meme that's been going around with Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal because I love Mama Cass, and Make Your Own Kind of Music is such an upbeat. I was listening to it this morning, so that's definitely up there too. And that meme is so hilarious.
All right, another over here.
So no one's really asked about A Simple Wish, but how was it working with Martin Short?
Martin Short is so funny, so sweet. He would be bursting into song in between sets and in between, shots. And he was so goofy, so funny. And I think one time we asked him, it was me and Francis who played my brother. We were like, oh, when did you start doing comedy? And he was like, oh, probably around my early 20s. And Francis said, when did you realize you were funny? And he said, about age 4. And he really was. He was so funny and so sweet. And I consider myself very lucky to have worked with him. Kathleen Turner was great too. I used to play with her daughter. And actually, I re-met her a couple years ago, and her daughter was there too. And her daughter told me that for Halloween one year, she went as Jennifer Rabbit, which would be Jessica Rabbit and Roger Rabbit's daughter. And I was like, you are really the only person who can canonically say that because her mom was the voice of Jessica Rabbit. So I thought it was very funny that she kind of did cosplay and Halloween as Jessica Rabbit's daughter. I thought that was very, very funny. Very clever.
All right, one more. I'm going to have to run over there. So I have a quick question. You've done a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm.
Any new writing projects that we should keep an eye out for?
I do. I have one that is coming out this month, and it is about the pains of trying to be good and trying to be a good girl and trying to figure out what that means, because that's kind of how I felt my whole life. That one is, it's more for grown-ups. There's nothing like particularly inappropriate or whatever, but it's just more for adults. But I think a lot of people who grew up, especially those of us who, were like Matilda, were like very bookish, tried to do well in school, tried to do these things, will feel like that. They will understand the pressure that you feel to be a good girl and to, always be a people pleaser. And the irony of that is the more you try to please everybody, the more angry with everybody and with yourself you get. So, I think that my point there is the more you try to be perfect and the more you try to be a good girl, the less true you are to yourself. And, you have to be honest with yourself and with your emotions, and also learn how to say no to things. Learn how to say, you know what, I don't want to do this. I'm too busy right now. I've got to set up boundaries for myself and to make myself feel better. And that's a very hard one lesson. So it's that's coming out through Scribd, Scribd. It's an audiobook. And yeah, you can listen to it. It's called Good Girls Don't.
That's awesome. And this will be our final question right over here. So no pressure.
Hi, Mara.
Hey.
Okay, so I have one question, and it's been on my mind for years. The dance that you did in Matilda, was it improv, or was it like scripted, or did you have some sort of idea as to what you wanted to do for the dance?
Like, was it choreographed? No. And you can tell because I am not a good dancer, and those are my actual dance moves. The thing is, though, that I have sort of plausible deniability because I was actually dancing to a totally different song. We were doing an instrumental version of Harry Belafonte's Matilda. Matilda, 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 she take the money and run Venezuela. Great song. And then they switched to Itty Bitty Pretty One later on, also a great song. But I was so nervous about dancing because I've never been a very good dancer. And so I went to Danny DeVito and I was like, I'm really nervous about the dance scene. I don't want to dance in front of everyone. And he said, okay, well, the rule is that everybody on set that day has to dance. So I was dancing, but so were the assistant directors, and so was Danny, and so was the whole sound team, and so were the wardrobe designers, and so was my mom, and so was everybody. And there was even somebody sitting behind the couch, and they were making Wanda, the doll, dance with little things. So even the doll was dancing. And it was one of the most fun times I've ever had filming because we just had a giant dance party. And really, what is better than a giant dance party where you don't feel like you're being judged? You feel like you're just kind of a part of a party. I don't think that there's anything better than that. I am so happy that Danny gave me that opportunity. And I love hearing that to this day, people will dance along with it, or they'll even do the Matilda challenge where they'll make things move and they'll all dance together. And yeah, I say, let's just keep it going. Like Bill and Ted Face the Music. Let's just keep dancing. Let's just, have this be a universal dance party every time we watch it. And yeah, that's the way that you can join in and you can be part of that scene too. Yes. Yes. Danny DeVito was very wise, very good with children. I was very lucky to work with him.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you so much.
Give her
Smart
a huge
questions.
round of applause.
You guys are so lovely. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Be sure to visit her at her table.
I'm going to curtsy for you. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. Such smart questions, such sweet people. Seriously, thank you so much.
This is Debbie Derryberry, and you're watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, geniuses know you need to have fun and follow your fandom. Got a blast!